Good evening, people. This is the story of John Macleay. It's an unusual story. One I think you'll find very interesting. John woke up, went to his front door, and went out onto the street. Unusually quiet. There were no cars. There was no dogs. Normally the dogs were a pain and they were always barking, but there was no one. So he thought he'd walk down to the local corner store to get his newspaper. He got to the corner store and the corner store was closed. He leaned in and he looked in the reflection, as a vain young man does, brushed his hair and said, "Yes, that looks all right." And he looked in, he could see the newspaper, and it said the 9th of February 2045. He thought it must be a joke. He tapped on the window and no one came. So John thought he'd go for a walk. He loved the little valleys and dales of his local county, so he thought he'd just go for a walk. It felt like a walk. So he walked about 2 or 3 miles up to the edge of a ridge, and he started to feel a bit tired. But he kept going. He knew he wanted to go to the very top, his favourite part, overlooking the town. He got about halfway up the hill and he started to ache and get sore and unusually tired. He looked at his hands and they were all wrinkly and his legs were thin. He thought, I must be becoming ill. But he pushed on and he got to the very top of the ridge, and he turned around and looked over the city, and he loved the view there. He found a rock just over to the side and he sat on there looking for a while, looking at the beautiful city where he grew up. And he looked down at his arms and legs. He said, I must be getting really ill. It was like he was aging, which was very strange. John turned his head around and looked down just at the edge. There was a little rise, and there, on an area that he loved, was actually a gravestone. He thought it was very unusual. And there were freshly laid flowers around the gravestone. He was curious. He couldn't quite see. His eyes were so sore and tired. He said, I'm definitely not feeling well. Anyway, he sort of semi-staggered over towards the gravestone. He put his hand on the top of the gravestone and he started reading. It said, John Macleay, 1985 to 2045, 9th of February. He leaned back and blinked his eyes, and with that, he now had a view from the stone looking down to the valley that he loved. This was John Macleay's journey. One of you may have a similar journey and a story to tell. John Macleay now rests in the place he loves. But he was still a ghost. And ghosts and things that go bump in the night can sometimes be explained, but not always. I hope you've enjoyed this story, probably much more than John has. Good night.